touch magic, which creates gesture and touch display that allow users to interact with the screen simply by taking pictures or by touch.
It's very tough.
Ladies and gentlemen, a huge round of applause for Mr. Anup Tamar.
Good evening, everyone. So, I think it was quite an interesting talk by Hari sir. Hari, kind of do all these quadrants and try to classify people into different kind of wealth makers, and I was really excited to hear that talk. I'm going to, in my talk, the major point of discussion is going to be finding the dots. Here we are saying we should connect the dots, but the key thing is that how we find these dots, or what are these dots exactly, and how you need to identify them, or what you need to do in your daily life to identify them and connect them so that you can become a successful entrepreneur. I believe everybody here wants to become an entrepreneur at some point in time. That's why you're here, right? How many of you want to become an entrepreneur? Most of you. Okay. So I'll just start actually by taking you through my life journey, on how things started connecting or how things connected, and maybe then I'll take you through a 5-minute presentation of what I'm doing today, and then we'll come to the dots or finding the dots thing. So I started off art was my hobby. When I was 4 years old, I started folding paper. By the age of 7, I had created something like 1,000 origami models. So I was really fond of art right from childhood. And as Hari sir said that by the age of 7, you know what you're doing. I was doing art by that time, and I sent my models to Japan. I sent my models to Netherlands, and I got good kind of I won a lot of competitions all over the world when I was 7. And art had been my passion, or till that time. And after that, for learning, basically whenever I was sending these models, how many of you know what origami is? It's an art of paper folding, where you take a single piece of paper, you fold it, and without cutting or sticking, you make models out of it. So I used to make dinosaurs or flowers or you can practically make anything using origami. So to send my models to Japan, Japan is the originating country of origami, and to send my models, I started using computer-aided design to make the diagrams, and that was the reason why I got the first computer at my home. And I was probably 8 years old, 7 years or 8 years old when I touched the first computer. And I joined some classes to learn CAD/CAM, to just get an idea of how to draw things on the screen, and I learned Photoshop, CorelDRAW, and whatever that standard course was there. And in fact, actually, nobody was ready to teach me in a formal setting environment, because I was this tall. And they said, this is only after you complete engineering or something, you can do all these courses. So fortunately, I got a good guru. He said that, I believe in you. I'll come home and teach you on weekends. So we used to sit on only Saturdays, Sundays, and right morning 8 to night 9 o'clock, we used to sit at a stretch, and he used to teach me. So he taught me these computer-aided design software, and just because he knew some other software also, he taught me programming. He taught me Fox Pro. So by the time I was in 6th standard, I knew Oracle, Fox Pro, and Visual Basic 4.0, and I was already programming some small applications to solve some basic problems, or some small IT applications to start off with. And that actually really generated my interest in computers and electronics as such. As a child, I was fortunate also to be born in a family which had a business as a backing, but I think I'll just clear some air on what happened before. Is that I have not taken a single money from my father to start the business. I have earned that money and put my own money, and it's a philosophy in our family that my father also bought the business from my grandfather. The business doesn't get inherited, because that's how you learn, that's how you are supposed to take up a business. I'll come to this bit later on. But so I started off by the time I was in 9th standard, can everyone hear up there? The mic is off. Yeah, the mic is off.
Back.
But I think I am loud enough. Everybody is. Can you hear me back there? Okay. So I started off like playing with some electronics, and like computer just became my another passion along with origami. And today, what you see, like I'll be showing you out here, it's actually a blend of art and technology, and means these pieces automatically connect somehow. Like I never intended to do something like that. So after I finished my, in 9th standard, I finished all the Microsoft certifications, MCSD, MCSE, MCDB. I just decided I don't want to go to school. I took a break for 2 months and I gave these exams. And I cleared all these exams in 2 months' time, and then I was back to school. And luckily, like my parents were okay with me doing that. And after I finished my 10th standard, like I was born in a Marwadi family, so business to karna hi tha. Abhi kya karne ka hai, whether to join my father's business or start something new was up to me. So I was always passionate about creating things. Like I would put myself under the creator profile, like where I get a joy in creating things. So I started off my first company right after my 10th standard. I had some vacation time, so I said ki kuch to start karte, let's start a company. I hired like a couple of people. Well, one person I took from my dad's company was handling IT, and like we started off a company called Technokarma Labs. The idea of Technokarma Labs was that this company would work on some crazy ideas, like which are like R&D projects, and once these R&D projects are prototyped, we do market validation on them. And if they are validated well in the market, we figure out a commercialization strategy for it. Like either take it in form of a full-fledged company, or take it, or just build up a license and license it out to another company, or like maybe just shelf it out for several years so that it can be used later on. So it was more of a like an idea factory, idea creation factory that we thought we could create, and that was the philosophy behind Technokarma. I had to unfortunately shut down the operations of Technokarma right after I finished my 12th standard because I decided to go to US for my further education. I completed my master's. They allowed me to skip bachelor's degree, and I completed one master's in electrical engineering and one master in computer science because I used to kind of like programming and electronics both. And after that, I was doing my PhD. In the meantime, I worked with a company called Qualcomm, which is a chip making company. So I was in San Diego working with them. And during my college days, I published a lot of papers, published few patents during that time, and I was overall like creating a lot of things. And it was just an instinctive thing that I want to create something. I want to create something new that will bring a change. And it happened that actually I was doing my PhD at University of California, and the professor said that due to recession we have not got funding for this particular project we were working on this year, so you may have to shift to another project. And I shifted on another project, and I didn't like it very much. So I said, okay, I'm taking a leave of absence for a year, and let's see if next year the funding comes back, I'll come back to the university. And I've never gone back after that. I came back to India. In the meantime, I was consulting to a lot of startups in the Silicon Valley. I was really keen on creating a Silicon Valley culture out here. What is this Silicon Valley culture? Where there are VCs who are ready to fund crazy ideas. It's the people who have the mentality to be a part of this kind of a company, which may succeed or fail. So it's a culture, So to create that culture, I thought that we have to start that kind of a culture out here. I had an option to start it in the Bay Area or come back here and start it, and I thought, it's better to start it here. Why? Because, we want to contribute to the Indian economy by doing that. And economies grow only if, companies grow, wealth is created through some channels or resources. So I started off Touch Magics. I came back in 2007. I started, I already had prototyped the idea of Touch Magics. In my spare time, I used to do a lot of prototyping work. I've done prototyping of wireless mesh routers to ad hoc computing systems, and a lot of millions of lines of code I've written as a pastime. And I happened to come back to India, and this was a completely irrelevant field for me. Where art was meeting technology, because I had a background in communication theory, systems and routers, and building networks and high performance computing. And this was completely different to computer vision and user experience design. Most of the design people can actually correlate this more than I can to start off something in that space. So TouchMagics Media basically is a company where like we briefly put our statement, like we create different technology experiences for people which they don't forget. So these are experiential technologies, like as of now these are experiential technologies. They are used in all sort of various environments, and it's basically a combination of hardware and software. So like there is a piece of hardware which is either a sensor like a touch sensor or a gesture sensor combined with a detection engine which is a software, and we build tools on top of that. So like software development kits for third party application developers to build content on it, or like we have a tool called Creative Suite which allows like non-programming content developers who just want to use like a PowerPoint like tool to just put in graphics and work in that restricted environment, but still use the gesture systems to create something, or use the touch systems, multi-touch systems to create something. So all these things combined together create an experience. So we launched the MotionMagics Floor as the first product, as a prototype. Like this time even TouchMagics as a company wasn't existing. So I came back, we had a team of couple of people working in my uncle's office, and we started off in one bench out there, and we said that, you know, let's build something like this and test it out. Very important is to build something and test it out. We built our first prototype. It worked very well in the lab. We went to a customer, we told him that, you know, we have something really great, everybody is using worldwide and blah blah blah. We just, like, marketing crap, we just threw on them, and we said that, you know, we have something that will solve your problem, and he said, okay, like, why don't you give me a demo? And that time we didn't have a demo, you know, honestly, like, we just had some videos that worked in the lab, and we had never tested this on the field. We said, you know, what's the run, let's try it. We went in the field the other day, and we realized that, you know, there are a lot of practical challenges that we started facing in the field, which we never considered in the lab. So, like, one problem was that the light in the, you know, the ambient light usually affects optical system. People who are from electrical engineering might know that. But, you know, like these kind of real practical problems, or say, we had to align the sensor exactly to the center of the screen. So we had to suspend the sensor, which was like a, we had built like a 10 kg sensor, which had to be suspended in the middle of the screen. So we had to put a counterweight of almost like 18 to 90 kgs, and वो किधर से लाएंगे वो भी पता नहीं था. So, you know, कुछ तो जुगाड़ करके we set up the system, and we got feedback from customers. You know, like the first thing that we said, that we kept a comment book out there, and we said, people, whatever you think, write down. So people said, wow, this is great. Can you do this? People generated ideas. When people saw this for the first time, they generated ideas. Some people asked us, like, can we rent out this system? Some people asked, can we put it in our lobby at our home or like at our office? Some people asked that, why do I have to step on something? Can't it be by waving something on the screen or waving at the wall, like by moving a hand gesture on the wall? So these kind of feedbacks came out of the first initial deployment we did of the MotionMagics Floor, and you know, then came the MotionMagics Wall and the other products. But this is how it started. You know, like we were using constant customer feedback to build up the product line and like build up the vision for the company or the product line for the company in times to come. So, so currently we have two mainstream products. One is the MotionMagics Floor and the Magix Touch Window, which is a multi-touch screen. We have installations, like probably more than 150 installations all across the world. And you know, these are used by like all sort of brands like Intel, Nike, Nokia, Reebok, LG, Samsung, you just name it. Like they are using these technologies to create very large-scale experiential displays. You can see some examples here. Like we did a campaign for Aircel down there, where you know this kid is walking on the floor and you know moving around those icons, and people are noticing that kind of an advertisement. You know, like instead of putting a static hoarding, you play with the ad. You are more engaged. You notice that ad more than you would have noticed it on a hoarding. And you know, we have 3 installations of Mumbai Airport. There are some installations in museums, gaming arenas, all sort of places. And like these are some installations that we have done for like Nokia and Nike, where these are like touch screens which like create very large scale integrated touch screens. Like here you can see like it's integrated into the wall, and these are all multi-touch. So these touch screens support 40 simultaneous touch points. And these work on glass display. So these are like a very different grade of technology that was built to solve this problem. This video kind of just gives an overview of what we do. initial systems were one touch and two touch only. Like later on they went on progressing to multi-touch. So there's a display we did for Castrol, where somebody passes by and there's a fire that rushes through. This guy is like shocked what happened. There's a display we did at a museum where we created a history wall. So somebody going and pointing at a timeline in history, it tells you what happened in that year. You can play football on the floor. You can like walk on water or flip tiles. You can play like whack the whole game but with landmines. These are like just some molecules on the floor which are moving around. Basically people stop, they look at this, oh like this is something really interesting. Like they can either engage further by playing a game or like there's social messaging. Social messaging is another application where it is used. So these are the touch screens that we have done at 19. So like when you go to a store, even the shopkeeper doesn't know what he's selling or the salesman doesn't know what he's selling. So these are like information displays. This is in gaming, like gesture-based gaming. You can paint a picture by just waving a hand. These are like, again, like in some club activations, like all these restricted brands which don't have advertising opportunities outside, they want to catch a customer's attention at these places. So, like liquor companies and cigarette companies, they use these medias to kind of promote their products in restricted areas. So that's kind of a brief overview of the motion sensing. Yes, it's all magical, that's why I call it magic. So this is basically what we make. Like this is a motion sensor that captures like high-speed motion tracking with accurate detection. It works in harsh environments. It can practically like work in a 60-degree kind of a bus shelter and an ST bus stand or something like that. And all this is like scalable to multiple accesses. So you can create, like we recently created an experience for Airtel on a bowling alley where you throw a bowling ball. We had put up 6 sensors connected to each other and the bowling ball is basically tracked in real time and there is a fire that follows the ball in the projection. So you can check out the video on our blog for these kind of projects. So basically like motion sensing combined with content, or content is what I call is art. So this is how my passions met, like technology was something that I was learning as one passion, art was my another passion, and they kind of were blending, or this business is basically a blend of both these two things. Because without technology you can't do art, or without art you can't do the technology that is required to create this end-to-end experience. So these are the different kind of application areas that we sell systems in. Like it's sold in retail, education, gaming. In events you can see like there's a fashion ramp created which is about like 60 feet long, where people walk in the water waves and there are fish moving around in it. And it's used in defense simulations. It's used in outdoor advertising quite popularly. And our innovation didn't stop there. Like we have like bunch of crazy people. Like there are people who come from a background who have studied at Carnegie Mellon or universities in UK, and we have created an ecosystem for these people to come and work on cutting edge stuff. And lately we actually were analyzing the surface market, like the surface computer. All this is like catching up really well. We thought that we should look at this problem in a whole different perspective. Like there are some limitations of the systems that are out there that we wanted to overcome. And we actually did a re-engineering on all of this concept, and we built something called the Magix Table. So this Magix Table basically is the world's thinnest multi-touch table computer that's available in the market today. It uses an HD LED back display. Most of the multi-touch systems that you see out in the market, they use a projection on the backing. Like recently Microsoft released a Surface unit which uses an LCD in the backing, but till that time it was all projection based. none of the units that were available out in the market were plug and play. You know, like everybody, all the units required some calibration to be done, some kind of ambient light setting to be done so that it works under that condition. So we wanted to build a unit that was plug and play. Like you pull it out of the box, plug it in, switch it on, and it starts. Like no calibration required. So it just plugs and play out of the box. Another thing is that, you know, being multi-touch, a lot of people can't visualize what you can do with multi-touch. Like, it's very hard for a mouse-based designer. Like, I think a lot of UI designers or people who are doing interaction design can understand this bit. Is that what you can do with multi-touch is very different than what you can do with a mouse-based system. And to use that kind of an input, people require applications. So there are no ready applications out in the market which are already serving or already using that kind of multi-touch to that level. So we kind of partnered with a Sweden company to develop these applications, and we ported these applications onto our platform. So these had like some very basic applications like that people would want. For example, view some 3D model that you have designed in 3D Studio Max with multiple points like 3-finger tilt, 2-finger pinch, and 2-finger rotate and things like that. Or wanted to have a media viewer app where you can load up all the photos and then, like as if you're sitting on a discussion table and move a photo and pass it to you, kind of a gestures would work on that. So people can load their own photographs in that interface and use this multi-touch table to the full extent. So we bundled like about 25 applications, and one of the applications is built by Manas out there, and we should clap for he was interning with us last year, and he built one of the applications as part of this suite. He built a bow and arrow game. He built a bow and arrow game which is quite popular now with our customers. And it doesn't end there. Like, we want to contribute to the environment, so we built this whole unit which consumes 60% less power than the Microsoft Surface. So using the LED technology, using the type of computer that gets bundled in there, we were able to reduce the power consumption by 60% to drive this whole unit, which was, I think, an amazing achievement. And it can, so basically this table can run forever. So this is a small launch video that we did.
Introducing Magix Table, the revolutionary multi-touch table from TouchMagix. 40 simultaneous touch points, supported with high-speed tracking. Ready to use applications for your product display and presentation needs. HD LED with unparalleled clarity. A whole host of features with applications you can customize to suit your needs. World's thinnest multi-touch table. Open software development interfaces. The Magix Table from TouchMagix. Yours to experience.
Yeah, this is what we launched. We launched this last December. We got coverage on all major, I think about 12 to 15 TV channels for the launch, and it was overall a great success. Even in the market, this product has been accepted. We are exporting to more than 25 countries within 2 months. This particular product. You can see we are constantly innovating on something really crazy, and all these are actually targeted towards a similar market segment that we serve. And there was another requirement from the market which said that we wanted to do something with the cell phones. And we said that there are hundreds of cell phone platforms available out there. There has to be something or some kind of an engagement mechanism for a consumer to interact with the display without actually downloading any application on the phone. There are, if somebody is carrying an iPhone, it shouldn't be that he won't be able to interact, but somebody with a Nokia phone will be able to interact with the display and things like that. So what we did, we engineered this product, which is like actually a simple extension of a interactive voice recognition system that is usually used in call centers, but a portable version of it. So this unit, you can put a SIM card, and if I want to take a vote from all of you guys on this screen, I can just ask you to SMS on the SIM card number that is in there, and the bars will rise like right up on the screen. Like it will receive the SMS, feed into the content, and give you the results right on the screen. Or imagine like you walk up to a display in the mall. It says like, play a game and win discount coupons to shop at Nike. So imagine like walking up to a display in the mall, and like you play a game. It says dial this number to play a game. You dial in that number, and then it uses your actually DTMF keypad, like recognize the tone on this device, and you can like interact with the display actually without downloading any software on the phone. You are just making a call, like a minute or two call to win some prizes. And if you answer the questions correct, get a score correct, you get some redemptions back. So there are a whole lot of application possibilities that are opened with this Magic Phone device, and we are working with content developers and interaction designers to design different kind of games and things with this kind of a gadget. So we are a core technology company, building hardware and software to enable content developers. But at an initial stage, to find content developers is also difficult. So content development, so we have a dedicated team who also thinks content development. Some of the content, probably I would say like 20% of the content is done by third party right now, and 80% is still done by us. But that ratio will change over years or time to come. So these are just some of the customers that we have served: Nike, Castrol, Nokia, Cisco, blah, blah, blah. So, and this is just the beginning. We are just 2-year-old company. We are like continuing to grow. We have a complete dedicated R&D division who is like a mix of hardware, software, and we have a content team who is building interactions and different kind of uses of this thing. And yeah, we are hiring. So if somebody is interested to apply, feel free to drop me an email. And we are also keen to get good interns. Like as much as students require good companies to work with, even companies require good students to work with. So we are open to internship programs. We have very good internship programs, and if you are interested, drop us a mail. So, okay, let's move away from that topic, and I'm going to talk a little bit about innovation, or how to innovate. Where do all these ideas come from? What are these dots? How can these all dots connect to create a successful entrepreneur or a commercial product? Is the key. So innovations can be roughly divided into two broad categories. One is a sustaining innovation, and something that we call as disruptive innovation. What is a sustaining innovation? Like, for example, one I have already given an evolutionary example of a sustaining innovation: mobile technology. What is Microsoft Windows, say, Windows Vista fall under, or Windows 7 fall under? It's a sustaining innovation. They are building up on what they have built. In between, they tried to build something like a stripped-down version of Windows XP, and that never worked. They said like, we'll allow you to run only 2 windows at a time, a starter edition or something like that. So people who are doing sustaining innovation, it's very hard for them to come down this slope. Or like you don't see Mercedes making better cars, and innovation is always like this. And disruptive innovations are usually done by smaller companies. Like digital photography was not invented by the company who actually invented something the role-based photography. Like all these are disruptive technologies that are changing or which kind of come and disrupt the whole market. So here are some examples. Like electric lighting was replaced with gas lighting, like the gas-based candle, those were replaced by electric lighting. They were not done by the same company. Carbon paper versus Xerox paper. They were not done by the same company. Fax and email, they were done by 2 different companies. So, what I'm trying to say is that a company, like, if somebody is doing something, that doesn't mean that he's doing it in the right way. Like you saw the way iPhone came and disrupted the smartphone market. Why? Because they thought that it's not being done in the right way. Touch phones are not done in the right way. Why do you need a stylus? You should use your actual touch to interact with the display like that. They changed the whole conception of the industry. They actually changed everything. And that kind of thinking comes only if you think outside the box. I can go on talking on where the box is because it's a very vague term. Everybody says think outside the box, but what is this box? We'll come to that topic later anyways, as part of the dots or connecting the dots bit. So, usually disruptive innovations are built by smaller companies or by different companies, and these are like, capturing or disrupting an existing market or creating a new market space overall. Like the iPod actually created a new market. There were MP3 players in the market, but not everybody was buying it. Why? Because probably the music delivery mechanism was not all that great. iPod changed everything. They built something that was solving a real life problem, but in a much better way. So this is how the art is meeting technology. Means iPod basically is a creation of art and technology meeting together. Like all Apple products, I feel, are a blend of art and technology together. So, what are these startups? Startups are basically small companies. Like all these big names that you see today, at some point in time they were startups. If they would have said that, "Arey, ye cheez ho hi nahi sakta," to kabhi nahi hota. They would never have been entrepreneurs doing something big today. So these startups basically follow this Silicon Valley culture, and they have a vision to build a disruptive product. How they attract investors and things like that, and they basically contribute to the economy. So coming to the finding the dots, so I have kind of highlighted some dots. Like the first dot that I feel is inspiration. Like where do ideas come from? Like how do you start thinking about whether this is the thing that I want to do business on? Like everybody, you might be getting like 10 ideas. How do you boil down on this is the idea that needs to be worked on? So find sources of inspiration. So the first dot that you need to find is the inspiration dot. And where you get this from? You get it from everyday life things that you do. Like maybe Steve Jobs thought that, this music thing is not really, like the music delivery mechanism that I'm currently using is not all that great. It was an everyday life problem that he tried to solve. Or Nike recently started these in-shoe chips which allow you to get data on the phone to see how much you're running. So all these kind of problems you face in when you're jogging on a track, you want to have treadmill data on your phone. So these are everyday life problems which are being solved through some kind of an innovation. And this is the inspiration behind it. Movies is another piece of inspiration. I used to watch a lot of movies during my college days. Probably one movie every night or something like that. There was this people distributing movies on the land. And, one of the movies that I actually happened to watch was Minority Report. And that is what really inspired this idea. Tom Cruise moving with his hands and interacting with a display from a space. Research papers is another great place where you can find inspiration. People who are technical and want to do some technology-related innovations. Research papers have a lot of information in them with references to previous research. So if you read a latest research paper, you get links to all the related things in that particular space. So that's another great source of inspiration. Nature, popular example, nature also inspires, Newton saw an apple dropping, any kind of a random idea. I get a lot of kind of visual ideas or artistic ideas by looking at nature. I was thinking that what combination would go correct with this background, and I looked at the sun and I thought, oh, that's a great background to have. So something like that, so nature also inspires a lot of ideas. News, YouTube, and now it has become so much easier, to get these sources of ideas, which was not true 10 years back or before that. Another great idea, ideas multiply by discussion. So, when you're having coffee with friends, discuss ideas, because it's not that somebody will take your idea, steal it and start a company. So, it's an inspiration. You can keep on discussing ideas with friends and get inspired or, kind of get an idea out of discussion. An idea can originate out of a discussion. And question everything, the reason I've written that is that whatever you are seeing, don't assume that it has been done in the right way or it has been done already. That's why I won't do it. Think that what is wrong with this thing, or try to question. There may be an answer saying that no, this is the best way it can be done. But in most cases, you will find that the second person to invent something has gone far ahead than the first person who actually invented that thing. Why? Because he learned from his mistake and kind of engineered a product that was with a new approach to solve the same problem which the market evolved. So the next dot is an idea. Once you find an inspiration, you have to cultivate an idea. Idea is like a detailed thing which is driven from an inspiration. Okay, I saw something in Minority Report, Tom Cruise doing it, but who's going to use something like that? You know, like government training centers mein khali nahi dalne ka. You want to find a good commercial application for it. So share an idea with a friend or people whom you know, advisors, mentors, whoever. And when I was young, like people used to tell me, "Arey ideas batate mat ja friend ko, they'll steal it. You don't tell it to people, they'll steal it." There's nothing like that. Nobody is motivated enough to pursue that idea than you if you are talking it with your friends. And if a professor told me if an idea can be leaked by just discussing with a friend, it's not a good enough idea. That means it doesn't involve enough things. But I think people can hear me, right? Yeah. I think it's okay. So if you have an idea, share it with friends. It will multiply. It will help you refine the idea. Share it with your relatives. Test it on a relative. Test it on a potential person. And get validation. Get feedback from people and sleep over ideas. Like, don't do anything, like, no idea comes like randomly and you finish it overnight. Like, sleep over ideas. Try to cultivate them. Try to ideate more on them to refine them before you actually jump into doing something. So refine the idea. The next step is build a rapid prototype. So if you are convinced after discussion with friends, after doing some sleeping over the idea, you are convinced that this is what this idea is, build a prototype for validation. And depending on what kind of idea it is, the funding might differ, but I'll come to that part later. So, and another thing is that whenever you're thinking about idea, learn to unlearn and work at abstraction. What is this abstraction? I had read a paper by a person who talked about operating system abstractions, on how different levels of operating system abstractions help programmers to develop faster programs. Like, what is Java? It's an abstraction. But every abstraction adds a level of overhead on it. Right? So you should be able to zoom out from an idea to a level. Like, why children are more creative? Because their mind is not polluted with more information. As you are learning, your mind is getting polluted with more information. But be ready to unlearn. So if you have done something in some way, or if you are thinking something in some way, be ready to look at from a top view. You should be able to build your levels of abstraction to look at a particular thing from a different perspective. And be open to ideas, like listen to what other people are saying. And like, keep the idea simple and stupid. Like, don't build something like which is rapidly complex and which will take millions of dollars to do. Like, if you are an entrepreneur, the idea has to be simple enough that you should be able to explain it to your friend within a minute. If you can't do that, it's a very complex idea and probably won't succeed. Because you are going to do the same thing to a customer. You are going to explain that idea. And the customer should be convinced that yes, this thing will solve my problem or pain point. The next dot that you need to find or connect while you are thinking of becoming an entrepreneur is the market and competition. My approach is that, like, avoid looking at competition. So avoid looking into the details of what competition is doing. Because it will unnecessarily pollute your mind and it will create that barrier in that abstraction. Like, if I had gone and seen maybe something like how these other gesture systems are working and what they are doing and what's the research going on in there, I may not have been able to think about the idea of plugging in a creative suite, because I looked at it from a customer perspective. Like, if I'm in the customer's shoes, what would I want? I want something that can be easily customized. And later on, then we realized that nobody else was doing that, or nobody else was providing a toolkit like this to build custom games. Then, so you should be able to avoid looking, like, this is a very difficult thing to do, avoid looking, like, internet is so tempting to look for things. Like, avoid looking at things. First, clear up your mind on what you're trying to do. Then get into what the competition is doing, because you might come up with ideas that your competition has never thought of. Why? Because you are working at an abstraction. Once you know what the competition is doing, your mind will get polluted and you will just do the things in the way the competition has been doing. And then it gets into a rat race, or the competition reaches here, you try to reach here. So, like, Apple is my favorite company, so I'm using the example quite often. But like, learn to set standards, like, when Apple builds something, it sets a standard here, बाकी सब लोग इधर आना शुरू करते हैं, they set a standard here. So they set a standard, so set your own standards. Don't think of what other people are doing. Like Apple never thought what Nokia was doing in touch interface. They built something right out from their own mind. So collaborate wherever needed. Like again, an example of company like Apple, like they didn't go and invent the touchscreen. They took touchscreen from the market. They bought it. They bought the off-the-shelf touchscreen. They bought even iPod के लिए जो main chip जाता है, that was something that was bought off the shelf. So collaborate wherever you can, because some people have already solved some problem in some particular way and they are good at solving that problem. You are probably good at integrating that into something and solving another problem by doing that. So collaborate wherever needed and form partnerships. And once in a while, close your eyes and do just what feels right. Like if you know that is right, if you close your eyes and think at an abstraction level that this is what is right, it is right. And if you're thinking of market, like aim at the big fish in the sea. So aim at a $1 billion market. Like many people say that start with a niche and things like that, but I believe that if you have to spend few years of your life in becoming an entrepreneur and try to do something, aim at a big fish in the sea, because automatically the success rate will be higher. Another next dot is finding the right team, because without this, you can't become a good entrepreneur. You alone cannot do anything. Either you can go and be a part of a big team, or you become the leader and find the people to surround you so that you build the right team. So, like as a startup, we call it killer ninjas. Like the initial team that is there, it has to be a killer ninja team. They have to go and slice, dice and build code, build prototypes and do everything at a very rapid speed. So assemble a very good team to start off with, like a small, lean, mean team. Avoid giving out too many senior positions in the startup phase. Like I've seen a lot of startups fail because of that, where they give out a COO or a CEO position in the beginning. My company still doesn't have a CEO. I'm looking for a CEO. I am operating on a very different. I'm the sweeper, I say. Like I'm the founder and the sweeper. Like whatever requires to be swept, I'm sweeping right now, but maybe later on the CEO will come and do some things of it. So don't put too many senior positions to start off with, because it gets into the head. And it becomes difficult to remove these people later on, or if you want to get some better people in their place, it becomes very difficult to deal with that kind of situation. So avoid giving too many senior positions when you start off. Pick friends carefully. Like if you are partnering with your friend, be sure that that is the person whom you can easily tolerate and work with. If he's already intolerant while the initial discussions are going on, you need to rethink. Think scaling from early days. So what I mean by scaling is that today you are a team of say 2 people, 3 people, 4 people. That's how typically startups start. But you keep on scaling the team. So when you're scaling the team, there are a lot of decisions that you need to make in terms of HR policies, in terms of office timings and work holidays. There's a lot of things that creep into this place. So think scaling from early days, and today build systems which would last even when there are 100 people, because it's very difficult to bring people out from a particular policy. Like I'll give you an example. I used to work for a startup before, and they had a policy of unlimited leaves. So they used to allow employees to get unlimited leave. जब तक 20 employees थे, 30 employees थे, everybody was responsible, and it used to be a really great thing that unlimited leave, मुझे जब चाहिए तब leave मिल जाएगा. But later on, this kind of feedback on them, it's a very different mindset. So there are some policies that you need to take care from day one, which would help you in scaling up. So think, what will this policy do when there is a team of 100 people or 200 people? Whether I can implement the same policy out there as well. And pick people who share a similar vision. Somebody asked me a question on finance, like how do you get the initial finance? And this is a common question for a lot of people. So initial finance for any startup comes from these 3 F's: friends, family, or fools. So find these people and get your initial finance to build a prototype. And if a prototyping requires finance, do it through this channel. Or if you can find some people or friends to work for free in the beginning stage, do that. Like bootstrap your venture. Like I'm not a big fan of going there, raising multi-million dollars and doing multi-million dollar thing to build a successful company. I believe in bootstrapping a venture. Like you should start small and go on building up as required. And first thing to build a successful company. I believe in bootstrapping a venture. Like you should start small and go on building up as required. and like first, like only have funds enough to sponsor your killer ninja team, and then later on you build the other people around them. So, another good source of money which many people fail to see is get initial paying customers. Like for us, it was really essential. Like the initial funds, like I had some collected of my, I had collected some of my own funds through doing consulting. Something like 40-50 lakhs I had collected through doing consulting and other kind of activities in the US. And I had saved them to push it into this company. But later on the venture required more funds because we were doing hardware R&D and things like that. So I took a loan from my dad, and I paid it back this year, of course. But like who paid back this loan was the initial paying customers. So be very careful on giving out equity at an early stage. And if you are thinking that you want to bring in an angel investor or a venture fund in the beginning stage, they will eat up a big portion of the pie, and big I mean like 40% kind of a big pie. So be very careful while dealing with angel investors. If you only take capital if you really need it. So best way is like build a prototype, get initial paying customers, they become your source of income. Then you can go and approach a VC saying that, see, I already have an income. Now let's talk. If you go to a VC or an angel fund without actually having an income, they'll start questioning your idea itself, or they might kill your idea or say get lost. So the next stage of funding can come like once you have done these 3 stages, like start with friends, family, pools, bootstrap the venture, get initial paying customers. Then it's a good time to decide whether you really need to go for angel funding, VC funding, private equity or debt. My personal choice goes for debt and PE because like for the type of venture that we are doing, these two work out very well. But for some internet ventures or relatively higher risk ventures, I think angel and VC funding is a great fit. So it totally depends on what kind of venture you're starting, and you should take the type of fund depending on what type of venture you're starting. This is a little philosophical dot, but it kind of connects all the dots together. Is have a belief or a passion and the right attitude to do things. Like as we were discussing in the earlier panel discussion, like it's very essential to find the right gurus, advisors and mentors. These are your free resources who have experience in a particular field. Be shameless and get them. Like I went and the reason I got into Qualcomm was I went to that person at an IEEE conference and I showed him all my projects, and I kind of like impression marke aaya uske upar. So you have to be little aggressive in finding your gurus and mentors. And today this person is, all these people are guiding me. I mean, it's not that I'm doing this for some wrong reason. I'm doing this to get guidance, to get mentorship. So find the right gurus, advisors and mentors, and they will basically help you create a better refined vision. Because I am just 24 years old today. So vision kidhar se aayega? So these mentors, they give their wisdom to build this vision. Propagate this vision to your team. So as you are clarifying this vision, propagate this to your team. Believe in your own ideas, but keep a listening ear to the customer. Like if a customer is saying something, be ready to change something if the customer requires it. Like especially in the early stages, like you can't be arrogant, you can't be like you can't just say no to a customer. In the early stages, you said sab kuch ho sakta hai. And you have to do sab kuch to deliver the end result to the customer so that he becomes a faithful customer and he'll come back to you. So keep a listening ear and be ready to change your attitude and belief based on what the customer is saying. So just to complete, these are the dots that I just jotted down on the way, that these are the dots I feel are really essential to build a successful business. And once all these dots they connect, that means you are like, when you see all these dots connecting, that means you are ready to start off a venture, or you are ready. Like once you have a good team, a good idea, have done market analysis, have figured out a source of finance, you have the right attitude and belief and the passion to do it, you have collected the right team, and it takes a little luck and hard work. I say that hard work, the results are completely proportional to the amount of hard work you do. Like luck is probabilistic. The harder you work, there are more chances of you getting lucky. So, you know, it's a simple theory that I follow. Like, the harder you work, more chances of you getting lucky. All these things are basically required to create a successful business. Thank you. Do we have time for questions? Yes. Yeah, it's actually like a 1 hour talk. Out of the box thinking. Maybe next time I'll do that. But I think the inspiration bit and the idea bit kind of covered the other box. That basically defines the box. And the level of abstraction. Like when I say think outside the box, you should step outside the box and think from an abstraction level. You don't know what's inside the box. That is outside the box. Yes. So right now, so we are basically like increasing our sales. We have like our R&D team already in place, but we were hiring like new people in there. We are expanding operations right now. We are getting local offices all over the world, and so we have an office in UK now. We have an office in Mumbai. Oh, my role. Yeah, so my role is very much into technology and like marketing. I don't do sales, but sometimes if I'm on the field, I have to do it. Like I have to do everything that nobody else is doing. So slowly, मेरा role कम होते जा रहा है in the respective sections. But my key role is like I call myself a CTO. I'm responsible for the technology that's happening because I come from a technology background and that's my passion. Any more question? Yes.
You said you had done a lot of work with networking. Assessment projects and
In what?
networking.
No, I had done a lot of work in networking. Like in fact, I had done a lot of projects also in networking.
But in your
Yeah, that's why it's not related. Basically, like today, what I'm doing is not related to what my education taught me, and you know, it's just a matter of curiosity. Like because I didn't know something, I thought it at an abstraction level. Like if I knew computer vision, I would have never thought of solving the problem through a hardware-based mechanism or something like that. You know, like I believe in working at abstractions. If I don't know something, I believe in brainstorming more on that particular subject to come up with ideas and then go into the relevant field and try to dig up information. So networking is still, you know, it's a subject very close to my heart. So I do teach networking as a subject to some students. I teach high performance computing at a school, like at a college, master's level parallel computing class I take at one of the colleges in Pune. So like these are the subjects close to my heart and which I have like learned by training. But this is something that I have learned by passion or like by experimenting. Any more questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Your lecture was very informative, not only in terms of entrepreneurship, but also in terms of technology and design. As a token of appreciation, we would like to present you a memento.